I'm just illustrating that. I'm showing you how I've got plastic over this unit. I had to put plastic over it because there was too much airflow and I wasn't picking anything up, and I felt pretty confident the leak was coming from the condensing section. So I'm going to take you over inside the condenser here. Alright, now it's a little dark. Hang on, let me get my flashlight. Okay, right here on the compressor you can see a previous leak, and I doused that thing with bubbles and was trying to find it, thinking that the leak was going to be right there on the compressor, and it was not there. So I just, with the plastic surrounding the condenser, I just went and checked the whole thing, and this section over here looks pretty rusted as well. I thought possibly, hang on, let me show it to you. It's just hard for me to get everything together here. I thought that it was right there, but nope, no leak right there. Everything was good. Everything was good here. And there was also one other leak here, and let me show you that. Previous leak. Alright, there was also a leak right here. It's a little hard to tell. I can't get it really on the camera, but there was also a tube leak right there that was repaired. Okay, so the condenser was fine. So what I did was I just took the halogen H10 leak detector, which, let me show you how that operates. Alright, here's the halogen H10. You turn it on right here, and you adjust the sensitivity. Depending upon what refrigerant you're dealing with will determine what selector switch you have. Now the refrigerant that I'm dealing with here is R22, so the selector switch is over here to the right. I'll leave the sensitivity right there. So normally what I do is I go around my pipes and I'm searching for, I'm waiting for this thing to start buzzing on me, telling me, okay, I got a leak right there. And I didn't, alright, the light shut off on me, I had to restart. So anyways, I took my halogen H10, and these here are the suction line and the liquid line right here, and I just went around and kept waiting for this thing to sound off. And then I came up here to the liquid line sight glass, and I started getting that. Now you'll notice how that is really lighting off. Once that lit off like that, which kind of gives me the general vicinity of where the leak is, then what I do is I take a product, in this case it's this Brush On Blue, and I also have this product right here, which is just Big Blue in a spray bottle. So what I'll do is just take this swab, put it in there, and I'll show you what I am going to observe. Put it here on the top, and do you see that? It is leaking really good right there. You can clearly see that I have got a leak coming from this sight glass. So the first thing that I did was use the halogen H10 to pinpoint it. Then you use the soap bubbles here in case you got something else leaking. Check everything else out right here, and check everything around here on the bottom. And it is very evident that the only problem that I have is right here to right here. So I'm going to try to seal that up. I'll try to tighten that down. I might have to remove the charge and then replace that seal, and then go for that. Or I might even have to replace the whole sight glass, so we'll see in a second. Alright, so there's the sight glass. I'm just going to take an adjustable wrench here and see if that's loose. Indeed, that was slightly loose. I was able to get a little bit out of that. Let me go ahead and put some Big Blue on it and see what happens. not getting any leak at this time. Let me just verify that that's nice and tight. It didn't move much. All right, let's go ahead and take the halogen H10 on it. All right, that is no longer leaking. That leak appears to be now fixed. I'll just test it one more time. It was just loose. All right. As long as I'm here, I've got another sight glass here. Oh, but this one is non-adjustable. I was just talking about that sight glass right there, but this one doesn't have an adjustment on it like this one does. It doesn't have a removable face on it. So anyways, I was just basically that's all I need to do. Let me pan back. Alright, so basically I feel pretty confident that I found the leak and that the leak is now off. I'll just put my manifold gauges on here, charge this unit up, and get it to the proper amount of charge, and I'll show you that when I do that. Back at this unit, I'm getting ready to put gauges on right here. I've set the thermostat to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've already turned on the indoor unit. Once we hit the disconnect, this unit is going to light off and it's going to stay on because it's at 65. There's 3 other units here, but I set those thermostats to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, causing them to only work if the room is starting to get too hot. So basically, we're going to turn the disconnect on and then we're going to put these gauges on. Okay, so here we are, and we're going to attach these manifold gauges, HVAC manifold gauges, to this air conditioning unit right now. This is my set of gauges here. It's a 4-valve setup called the Brute. It is kind of heavy, but I like the way that it works, and I've got 2 sight glasses. I've got one sight glass on my regular 1/4-inch hose, and there's a built-in sight glass here, and then there's a 3/8 hose when I go and pull a vacuum on a unit. I leave it off except when I'm pulling a vacuum on a unit. Okay, so I'm just going to support this right here, and now you'll see that I got pressure on my gauges right now, 50 pounds and 50 pounds. That's because I've got low loss fittings right here on the low side and on the high side. And these are currently charged with R22. The refrigerant in the unit that I'm working on is R22. So this is perfect. I do not need to bleed the refrigerant out of this line, and it'll be really good for this setup. So I'm just going to support my gauges here, remove the high side and low side. Okay, so I've got my lines here. Now on a lot of people's gauges or hoses, the lines are color-coded, where the low side is blue and the hose is blue, and the high side is red and the hose is red. Mine are all just yellow, so I have to pay attention to where I'm connecting onto. Right here is my condenser, and right here is the liquid line coming out of the condenser, and this is the suction line going back to the compressor. So I'm going to remove the caps off the Schrader valve, and you always want to look inside your caps to make sure that if it's the O-ring type, that your O-rings are in there. I'm going to show that to you on camera. There's an O-ring in those caps, so I'm always verifying that that's happening, okay? So these caps are fine. I'm just going to put them there. Now, one other thing that I'm going to notice is that there is a Schrader valve here and on the high side. So that's telling me that once I connect on, I should be in the system, and I should not have to change these service valves right here. I will confirm that when I connect on. So the first one I'll connect will be the low side, which is the blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this ready. Now there's a conduit in my way, so I just have to put a little pressure on that. All right, just about on. Now, what I want you to focus on is this low side gauge. When I connect on, you should see gauge deflection. You see that? That's telling me that I'm in the system right now. So I am in the low side, and it's pulling a very low 30 pounds. For an R22 system, that's way too low. Now, for the high side gauge. Okay, I'm going to bring that over here. And now watch the deflection on the high side gauge. Okay, we're about 200, which is actually not bad. And that is how you put manifold gauges on an HVAC unit. Okay, so now that I got my gauges on unit number 1 for the first time, I was filling out my checklist before I put my gauges on. I knew that there was a problem. Now that I put my gauges on, I'm going to write down the suction discharge, and I'm going to get some more information here just to fill out my checklist. I'll write down the evaporator temperature, the high side pressure, the corresponding temperatures, and all of that. Because I need to add refrigerant to this system, I want to start off with a baseline, as you will. So when I add the refrigerant in, I can see where I went from and where I'm going to. Alright, so now what we want to do is I got my digital scale, I got my gauges attached to the unit. This unit's low on refrigerant, I need to add. I've already taken all my readings and I filled out my clipboard, so I have all my baseline readings. I'm going to turn the scale on, let that zero out. While that's zeroing out, I'm going to get my jug of R22 ready. Alright, so that's zeroed out nicely. Now I want to use the, by the way, I'm making sure all my valves on my manifold gauges are closed and tight. And now I'm going to remove the line right here, the 1/4-inch line for the yellow service line. Alright, so now I'm going to attach that to my 22 jug. Hang on. There it is. Gotta get the threads on just right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this valve, but at the same time, this is cracked. So when I open this, I'm going to purge the air out of this line and wait till it comes out here, like that, and then shut. That's it. That's all it takes just to purge the air out. Now I'm going to open this jug up 100%, and I'm going to turn this upside down. Alright, I want to make sure that this hose and this is all running freely so that this scale is accurately measuring this, the weight of this unit right here. So let me let that settle out. Now what I do, another thing that I do, is I take the date and I'll write it down right here on the top. 2/14/14. This is UPS AC number 1. And now I'll write down start. So I'm just going to get a baseline here of what I started with. 18.69 pounds. Okay. Now that I've got a baseline here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero out the scale again. Okay. So now I'm zeroed out. So now, when I add the refrigerant, I'll be able to know exactly how many pounds I'm adding in. I'm guessing I need about 4 to 5 pounds of refrigerant in this system right now to get it to where I want it to be. I'm all purged out right here. The compressor's running, and I I can go ahead and put my meter on the compressor and I can see what the compressor is doing for amperage. Right now it's pulling 6 amps on the condensing unit and I can go up to 8.4. Now, I inverted the jug, meaning I'm going to be adding liquid in here. When you add liquid, you have to be careful. It has to go in super slow, otherwise you can slug the compressor with liquid refrigerant. I don't want to do that. Let me show you how I prevent that. Now, alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack open this one, and I'm going to crack open this one here, adding refrigerant into the system. Right now I've got 35 pounds. I do not want more than a 10-pound differential on the low side gauge when I do this. It kind of jumps around, so you got to be careful. So there we go. I started out with 34, there's about 45 pounds on there now. Jumps around a little bit, so you got to kind of go slow. Now you can see here on the sight glass that refrigerant is going in. I've got 2 sight glasses here to tell me what's happening, and I can hear that the compressor is okay. I can see the amperage on the compressor, I can see that it's only 6.2, everything is fine, and I'm monitoring how much refrigerant is going in the system. So right now it's just 0.3 pounds, so it's very little. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going in this state until this pressure starts coming up to a more reasonable pressure. The suction pressure should be really not ever lower than 55 psi on an R22 system. So I'm just going to keep adding this in slowly and doing that. One other note that I can make here is that I'm wearing safety glasses and I've got some gloves on for some personal protection equipment. I'm not working with refrigerant directly, and in case some refrigerant was to leak out of a fitting or something, I've got some eye protection. You should always have this on when you work with refrigerant and putting gauges on the unit and so forth. So this is kind of a slow, boring step, so what we're going to do is cut the film for now. We're going to continue adding until we start seeing some good numbers, and then we'll revisit this. Okay, we just want to give you an update. So far we are 2.8 pounds into the unit right now. The suction pressure, I'm going to go ahead and shut the blue valve off for now, so we're not adding refrigerant. The pressure now is at 50 pounds. We started like about 30, 35. Discharge is at 225. The sight glass here, liquid line sight glass, still has bubbles in it. So we're still low on charge. I'm going to continue to add refrigerant at this time. I just wanted to give you an update, and that's it for now. Okay, so we're done adding the refrigerant into this package unit number 1. Now the findings that I got here, the readings on the gauge, let me show them to you. We'll do a zoom in on that. Okay, on the low pressure gauge, it's reading 50 pounds, which is lower than normal. And on the high pressure gauge, it's reading about 220. So I've added into the system, I've added 6.8 pounds of R22. The bubbles are gone out of the sight glass. I filled out my evaluation sheet, and basically right now what I'm getting is on the evaporator, the inlet temperature is, the air temperature is 73 degrees, and the outlet temperature is 55 degrees. So the air delivering out of the evap coil right now is 55 degrees supply air temperature. When we started it was 58. The delta T across the evaporator coil is currently 18 degrees. When we first started it was at 15 degrees. The condenser coil When we first started, we were getting an 8-degree split across this condenser coil. Right now we're getting a 17-degree split across this condenser coil. No bubbles in the sight glass indicates that we have plenty of liquid refrigerant going to the metering device. So I'm not necessarily hesitant wanting to add more refrigerant. The thing that I'm not exactly 100% happy with is that low side pressure of 50 pounds. Now, with the low side pressure of 50 pounds, my concern is that my evap coil is running too cold and I'm going to ice up. I took an actual low temperature of the suction line coming out of the evap coil, and that number is 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 40. It's above 32 degrees. I am not going to ice up my evaporator coil. So even though I've got a lower pressure than I really would normally be seeing, I'm not necessarily going to change anything. I also took an amp drawer on the unit. The amps are actually the same, 7.3 amps, and I can go up to 8.8 amps. The compressor is not stressed. So we are completely done with this unit for the annual service. All that we have to do is I'm going to take the gauges off, and I'm going to, once everything's done, we'll wash down this coil. But basically that was the process. Okay, I want to get my gauges off of the unit. I'm done adding refrigerant into the unit. So when I was adding in, I was adding refrigerant in the liquid state. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to spin this around. This valve is still open, but now it's going to give me a little bit of, alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the tank off, but I still have liquid in this line. I want to get all that liquid into the unit. So I'm going to open this up and open up the low side, and I'm going to let that purge into the to the low side to get all of this out. I'll also, what I'll do is I'll open this up and I'll put just a little bit of vapor in here, just making sure that I get everything in. Then I'll shut it off from the tank. Okay. Now I'm done with the tank. I can pull this off. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off, and I'm completely done with the service on the tank. And I got all that liquid into the unit. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to remove my high side gauge. So the high side gauge is back here. Not the high side gauge, but the high side port. I got low loss fitting, so I really didn't lose anything, but I got a little bit of high pressure here. So what I'm going to do, so let me just cap that in the back. Okay. Now, you see the pressure inside these gauges? I'm going to open up the blue and I'm going to open up the red. And what that does is it's going to equalize the pressures into the suction. Notice how the gauges are equalizing. So I'm just going to equalize the pressure to the suction pressure on the low side and the high side. Then I'm going to shut these off. Now the last thing that I need to remove is my low side connection. Okay, the low side connection is out. Let me cap that on the back. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is put my caps back on. And when you do the caps, of course you want to make sure that your O-ring is inside. So I got a good O-ring here. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the suction side. And I'm going to do the same thing for the high side. And that's how you remove gauges from the unit. Okay, one other note that I forgot to mention was what the superheat level was on unit number 1. This is unit for the leak. We found the leak at the liquid line sight glass, tightened it, checked it, no leak. We added refrigerant. We added 6.8 pounds of R22. Now the superheat level when we started was 54 degrees Fahrenheit. At the end it was 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Much better number. still could be considered slightly high, but considering that I had a full sight glass, I didn't want to push any more refrigerant into the unit. So basically that was it, just as the wrap up. Superheat level. How do you get the superheat? This was a fixed metering device, so to check the charge on a fixed metering device, you do want to use the superheat method. So in order to get the superheat, the first thing I'm going to do is I've got my manifold gauges on there. The low side pressure was 49 psi. The corresponding temperature to the saturation temperature is 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The actual low temperature, this is the temperature of the suction line coming out of the evaporator, was 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You take 40 and you subtract 25 from that, that gives you your superheat level of 15 degrees, which is a reasonable number. So anyways, I just wanted to, I don't think I said what that superheat level was before or anything like that. That's a very important number because you are charging on a fixed metering device is based off of that number. But basically that's it, and the rest of the units are pretty much the same as you've already seen, so we're just going to continue doing annuals across the board with the same process that you saw. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you could do me two things. If you liked the video, if you could please hit the like button down below at the bottom of the video on the left hand side. I'd like to, that would be nice. And also the second item, if you could leave a comment. I love to read the comments that people leave behind, whether they like the video or didn't like the video, or if they need some help or anything like that. The videos that I create are generally created for the people who work in commercial office buildings in the maintenance department, people that specialize in mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, although we do touch other things like roofing and other trades, drywall, painting, and so forth. But if you have any questions or anything like that, I also would like to share with you my website that I have, which is at kencogliano@wix.com/Ken Training. I am going to provide a link at the end of this segment, so this way if you want to click on that, you can go directly to my website. You can also check out all my videos there, as well as there's a section that you can send me a personal email if you wanted to discuss something that you're working on or anything like that. Thanks again, and I hope you have enjoyed the video that you were watching.